I think I did that correctly.
I thought,
I can do
I
it
thought
for
this
you,
would come up on
but,
my tablet,
yeah.
the response.
Are there
Okay.
other people we expect to be joining who are not yet here?
Mark DeWhaley just, he's traveling today and he thought he might be able to make it, but I don't think he will. At best, he'll be able to call in on his phone with the Zoom, but
Okay,
From Board of Finance?
from Town Council, I did not hear from Luke. And I think he's the only member of this committee who did not respond. So I think everybody who's on the Finance and Government / General Government and Library Committee who was going to attend is actually either on Zoom or in attendance. And I believe Chris Labris and James Yao are attending from Board of Finance. Are they both here?
James is here.
Just James.
Okay. Should we wait a minute or two for Chris, James?
I think he touched base on the meeting today. I believe he's attending. He didn't indicate otherwise. Let me see, and I have not received an email from him, so I assume he'll be joining.
Can
Okay,
anyone text?
Oh, I don't know.
James, do you have his number to text him?
Yeah, I'm gonna try that right now.
Thank you.
Tucker or Pam or somebody in the room, I'm trying to get the volume louder on my pad and I can't seem to do that.
We can hear you fine. You can't hear us as well?
Yeah, it's the volume in the meeting, the folks in the room and others on that I just can't make it any louder.
Does everybody have their microphones on who might be speaking? And I would suggest if you are speaking, make sure your microphone is on green and that it's close to you.
Yep.
That room has not great acoustics.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll just pay close attention. We'll give it another 1 minute and then I really want to kind of call this to order and get going because
Sure.
a lot of work has been put into the responses to these questions and there may be additional questions. So I want to make sure we have enough time to do all that. Looks like you got sunshine in New Canaan.
It's quite beautiful today.
Sunny today.
Good. Do I see Doug Stewart?
Yes, I am here.
Doug, thanks for joining. And is that Rob Lowe? I'm seeing the room from behind you guys. So I see who are they? I see Ellen and Cheryl and Rob. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. And Christina and Janet and Jen.
Yes.
We've got Penny and James and Hillary.
And Eileen just logged in on the Zoom.
Okay. All right, in the interest of moving ahead, I don't want to dawdle too long. Chris can obviously join when he has to. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Town Council liaisons to the Finance and Government, actually it's the Board of Finance, but the Town Council liaisons through the Board of Finance that includes Finance and General Government in town and the New Canaan Library. And the purpose of today's meeting is to review the answers to a list of questions that Town Council posed to the library in November. And Ellen and her team have put together extensive written responses to all those questions and submitted them back to us. So at this point, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Ellen and Cheryl and Doug and Rob for being here. And thank you to Ellen and your team for all the work that went into providing answers to our questions. Beyond that, I would like to just open it to Town Council members who are present, who want to review any of those answers to the 14 questions, or if there are other specific questions that you'd like to ask of Ellen and the team, just go ahead and move forward.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, you go first.
Okay, I have a question based on the presentation to the Board of Finance. And one of the slides is the 2024 funding comparison to peers. It's one of the first slides that you show.
Yes,
Okay, so my question is the $1,359,850, I mispronounced it. Is that your total fundraising exclusive of the endowment?
yes.
Okay. And what is the endowment at this point?
It's under 900, it's about 900,000 and change.
Okay, so when you look at the endowments from different libraries over the years,
Yes.
how long has it taken to build an endowment to the level that you would like to see so you can contribute back to the operating?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict that type of a result, Christina, because so many endowments are created through bequests, which of course you can't
Right.
plan for.
Right.
So in the case of, say, Greenwich, which has a 20-something million dollar endowment, that was one very large gift that they didn't really anticipate.
Mhm.
In the case of Darien, they started, I'd say, probably 15 or more years ago with a very large bequest, and they've grown from there. So it really depends on what happens in terms of people's planned gifts. And we've never had a very robust planned giving program.
Mhm.
I'm not really sure they did either, but I can tell you that, it's a very long road to get to an endowment that is going to make a significant contribution. We shouldn't expect that to happen. It's not like a capital campaign.
Okay, so if I may, if we move to the endowment side of it, when you do fundraising, one of the things that we did last year, which became a topic of conversation at this Board of Finance meeting, was the reduction that we made to fundraising. And you advised us that it was carried over to reducing programs
Right,
and other
because
services.
right, because we're given a block grant just as you do with the Board of Education. And so we receive a grant and it is up to us to decide how the budget is spent. So we felt that we couldn't really take there's nothing to be reduced in terms of fundraising if we're hoping to achieve the same results. And so the cuts had to be made on the side of things that were more malleable public programming services and technology.
So could you explain, I'm not fully comprehending the line of thinking. If you do a fundraising event, why would you not take from it the expenses incurred to put that fundraising event from the proceeds?
We do that. That is what we do. So maybe we should use a concrete example to help explain it.
Yeah.
Our biggest example is the literary luncheon. So we select an author about a year in advance and we pay a down payment on that author. So that comes out of our operating budget. We don't really incur many expenses until literally the date of the event. We have some expenses that come into play relating to decor or, the things that are involved in putting on a fundraiser. But we take in the dollars, right? We raise the money when we send out our invitations by September, which is several months in advance. So we're netting those later bills against the monies that we've already taken in, right? So each event has its own P&L,
Okay.
right? So we're paying, we're seeding the event with the expense lines that we know that we have. But for the most part, the majority of the expenses are paid for long after we've already received the funds from fundraising. Does that help you?
I'm processing it.
Okay.
You're paying along for the fundraising event before the fundraising event happens, is what you're saying.
No, I'm paying a very small portion of that.
Okay,
And I'm taking in the income well before the bills come due, the big bills.
okay.
So what are the big bills, right? It's, if you were
catering.
hosting 320 people at Woodway, what would it cost? Right? So it's in the 5-figure kind of range. If you were having to pay a florist to do arrangements, you don't typically pay that until you get much closer to the event, which is November. I think maybe we should say that. So there's a cash flow management piece here. We're getting in a few $100,000 and we're only paying out a smaller amount, let's say. I don't want to give away all my secret.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. And, I know you specifically had the question last year about, I think it was invitations or something along those lines. And, that's an area of really, that's a great success story for us because as you probably know, we do these really elaborate and beautiful invitations that are a reflection of the author in the book. And they're not cookie cutter at all. And typically what happens is we've had sponsors in the form of people who own private stationery companies who do the design work. And in the case of the one we had a couple of years ago, it was a $20,000 expense that she covered. So that expense never even showed up on our books because we were able to get a corporate sponsorship from her. And, we're very nimble at doing that sort of thing. In fact, even with the things like flowers, just to be, get into the weeds a little, we always have done that on a cost recovery basis, meaning if it costs me $100 for Earth Garden to do an arrangement, we're selling that at the event for $100. And so that's another example where we're creating these sponsorship opportunities that really allow us to bring maximum revenue to the bottom line for the library. We're very conscious of that.
So given all that information, why do you still put into the budget the
Because-
seed money for?
Because we have to pay for the author in advance. And there are some expenses we have to pay for in advance, but those expenses, we look at the net result, right? So we spend $1 to make 4, let's say. So you have to look at this as a sort of net result basis. And fundraising is not just about events, right? It's also about direct solicitation. It's about postage, printing, design, website. So it's not all, about events for us. It's only about 1/3 of our budget. The rest of it's the traditional business of a development operation, which involves stewardship and cultivation and other things that they just, software they take up money.
Does anybody else want to touch on that or?
No,
Okay.
just out of curiosity, the authors, is it usually like 10K? Like what is the?
Yeah, so it's ranged since I've been at the library from 10K up to 20. That's we sort of cap it at that.
Are you pretty?
Oh,
You're-
sorry, go ahead.
The fundraising number that you put in, you've increased it a little bit. How confident you are that
Yeah,
you're going to?
we increased it a lot. We increased it a lot last year and we are increasing it a lot this year. And I think I'm confident that we've, to be fair, we want to recognize that we've maybe achieved a new level within the community because of how people have responded so warmly to our service.
Right.
It's not a guarantee, right? And so there is a risk. In the past, we've always had much more modest increases in our fundraising revenue line. But as the person who's had that responsibility for 10 years, I feel like if we're going to make an increase, I'm the person who can say that it's feasible. We did exceed our fundraising goals last year by a significant amount. So I think we've been creative and proven ourselves resilient and able to meet the challenge. So I think I'd like to think that we can get there, but if the markets tank, then everyone's going to have a
Yeah.
problem.
It's also important that the team that you have is the major reason why you're able to achieve what you do. I mean, it's people who have connections to the community, who understand the community. So I feel like that's kind of important to recognize.
It's not only the amazing team that we have who are experienced and who work unbelievably hard. I have a woman who's been working for us for about 2 years and who literally worked up until like the minute before she just gave birth to her second child. And we're talking 80 or 90-hour weeks to make sure that during this period, we were covered for some of these, significant initiatives we have. And that I don't mean events. I mean, helping me get the annual report out this year. We haven't done that in several years, and making sure we had all of our acknowledgement letters taken care of in an appropriate time frame. That's very important for us to be able to do. We also have an incredible group of volunteers in the form of our board members and our committees. We can't discount the role that they play, especially on things like our bigger events where that's really important. Those connections to the community matter. It helps us achieve our corporate sponsorship goals and helps us sell our tables.
So I think it's sort of at the root of the question. And I see the value of some fundraising dollars coming out of what the town grant is. I think that's where the question is, right? Like, was there a specific decision by the governing board or by the administration of the library to apportion some portion of fundraising expenses to the town grant? Or is it just an accounting? Is it just a matter of accounting, or are you?
Go ahead.
Just to ease, you don't have to answer everything, but and for those that I haven't met, I'm Rob, so I'm a chairman for the library, so I'll speak from the trustee perspective a little bit. And Hillary, I think very importantly, I want to go back to what Ellen said on the net element, and that when we're thinking about the library, we're thinking about what can we afford for the town. And if Ellen is putting forth something that we spend $1 and we get $4, kind of our argument is, why aren't we putting 1,000 of ones down to get the 4,000 back as much as we can? And so we don't think about it that way at all, in terms of what dollars are we getting from town and what are we getting from the lunch and what are we getting. We're thinking collectively, we have a budget and we are doing our best to at least hit those numbers. And if there's deemed to be a shortfall, it's just as Ellen said, what can we cut? And then within that pool of what can we cut, what are we doing the best for the town to try that we're doing the best with a smaller budget? And I think Ellen and Cheryl did an amazing job last year that we can't bank on, quite literally, in terms of we made up for a shortfall for the most part with giving. But hopefully, when referencing the Board of Finance, that's not something that we can just expect is going to happen. So it's going back, we don't, to the very specific question, we don't think about them as different dollars that we can look at differently. It's our budget, and then we run the operations.
I mean, it's baked into our financial structure that we have a fundraising component. So I'm not sure I understand that it would be thought of in any different way.
Ellen, this is Eric. I don't have the Board of Finance presentation in front of me, but I certainly saw your presentation to the Selectmen and to the Board of Finance. There is a line item in the town council questions that the answers you responded to that shows fundraising event revenues projected for the fiscal year 26 at 340,000. But in the expenditure side, you don't have a line item expenditure called fundraising expenses. Is that because there's so much overlap and dollars are fungible and there isn't a one-to-one match in those two items?
We do have a line, I think, that says fundraising expenses. It's 90, which is flat from the prior year.
I'm just looking at it. I'm trying to find it. Maybe it's my poor eyes.
Chris, if
It's
you want
in the
to-
budget, yep. It's also,
It's right there.
It's under development.
yeah, so we have two big events, right? And we do some other things. in-
Okay,
Which is
sorry, I
worth
see it.
talking about. Yeah, I mean, if I may just elaborate. So the majority, let's say 2/3 of that money is spent to put on the literary luncheon, which yields about $250,000 to $60,000 gross. And then we have a second event in the spring, which is called Spring Edition. And then we do a couple of other things opportunistically during the year. And one of the things I think also is worth looking at is the idea that we're doing something called special programming, right? Because this question came up about, are we ever charging people? So just let me hit that head on, because we do have opportunistically ways in which we do ask people to pay for some programs, particular when we're blessed to have the opportunity to bring a major author or celebrity to the table where we know that that's going to bring us an opportunity to raise some additional monies. This isn't a big move the needle kind of a number, but let's use Lydia Bastianich as an example. She came to us and said, I'm only going to charge you my travel expenses, but I really suggest that you turn this into a fundraiser, which is the greatest sentence that an author has ever said to me. And, as a result, we said, okay, let's take a measurement and think to ourselves, what would people be interested in paying for that? And if Christopher Labrie were here, he would tell you quite a lot of money, because he and Vicky are major fans. So we were able to make about a 5-figure kind of a fundraising yield from just that one night, that one event. And of course, our own administrative costs and our work, our labor costs, if you will, are much lower for things like that. So we like to do that on an opportunistic basis. We did it with Al Roker. We recently did it with the actress from Hollywood, Naomi Watts. We do not want to do more than a few of those a year, because quite honestly, the library's mission is to provide free and open access to the community. And so we try to be selective about doing that, just really when we know we can easily make a difference. I'll give you another example. Amy Griffin is coming. It's already sold out. She's being interviewed by Hoda Kotb in a couple of weeks. And we had the opportunity to do a ticketed event, as we call that. And I said, you know what, let's have Elm Street Books just sell the book and handle the registration. And because mostly what this is about is authors wanting to sell books. And this is how the publishing industry has shifted. So in the 10 years that I've been here, this has been a dramatic change in how authors are willing to come to you. So you're either paying, Anthony Durr, $20,000 to come with a speaker's fee where he's guaranteed to show up for the date of your literary luncheon, or you're being really aggressive and working your connections to make sure you're on the trail of their tours, in which case maybe you're paying an honorarium, or maybe they're coming for free. But very often what they want is the chance to sell their novel, their book. And they want to do it through, not through the library, they want to do it through Elm Street Books. And we're so happy to partner with them. And the reason they want that is because the Elm Street Books sales count toward the New York Times bestseller list. And if we purchase the books, which we could, of course, purchase the books for a discounted rate and sell them, but that doesn't count in the tally for the New York Times. So they don't actually want us to do that. So we're kind of forced into this model of a ticketed event. And so on the occasion where we can create that little bit of a premium, and for Naomi Watts, it was a $20 premium per ticket, right? So somebody purchased a book for $30, we charged $50, we paid Elm Street $30, we kept $20. That wasn't a lot of money. That was a $6,000 yield, but we did manage to achieve that. And it wasn't, we made the decision, okay, that's not too painful. That's not too outside of our mission. We're going to take that opportunity because it's Naomi Watts and she's, up for an Oscar or whatever she is. So,
So when you feel that there's the opportunity, you try to take advantage of it, but what you're sort of showing us here, it's a minimal amount. Like it
doesn't move the needle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it were $20,000 to $25,000 in a year, it'd be a lot. And that's
Penny, could I ask a question on the opportunities for fundraising? As I look through the programs in the various categories, be it children or adult programs or adult instruction, so forth, there's a significant bump up from 2025 to 2026. Like children going from 15,000 to 20,000, and adults from 45,000 to 60,000. That to me seems like a lot, and I know you're responding to the perceived request for additional programming. And the reason why I'm a little concerned about this is we have similar kinds of requests, say in the recreation department. We need more fields for kids and, more opportunities for the kids to be playing games. And what we charge for recreation programs kind of balances out with what we have available for staffing and the fields. And so I'm just wondering if you can't look at what your programming perceived needs are and kind of level the requests a little bit more. Maybe we don't provide all of the programs that is perceived to be needed because of the attendant cost to deliver those programs, be it through, the program development itself or staffing. It just seems like a big bump up to me in all of those
I mean, the
categories.
dollars are definitely small. I think the percentages, of course, look to be more significant, but perhaps you had the opportunity to see the Board of Finance presentation
Yes,
where we had a slide that showed how our adult program expenditures compare to our peer libraries. And, our ask last year for the adult programs was 90,000. And of course, we cut it back to 45, and you can see that we spent about 85. And how did we do that last year? Well, we did that by drawing from some restricted gifts. And that is a non-perpetual form of funding that enables us to meet the demands that we're seeing. So I know, I think it's more than anecdote for us, Penny, that there is this need in the community. I will also point out that compared to our peer libraries, we're at about a 50% spend, let's say, compared to a Darien. Certainly, I'm looking at Westport's adult program expenditures. Their number last year was 280,000. So, I think while the percentages, of course, one could argue from 15 to 20 is a, significant increase, it's nowhere near really what we're looking to do. And I am always seeking alternative forms of funding. But again, I can't rely on the largesse of a donor to fund something that we really are providing in perpetuity.
Well, I think, along with that is it the taxpayer responsibility then to provide these programs?
Yeah, in some ways it is because, literacy programs are required to be free in the state of Connecticut. And that is across the board. Do you want to comment on that, Cheryl?
Yeah, I mean, it's the state statute, which we put in the answers to the questions. There.
I understand that. I read it.
Definition of a public library.
Ellen, you said 85,000 was spent?
Yeah, we spent $85,000 last year. And so that's coming out of our restricted gifts. So we're not even asking for half of what it is we actually spent last year.
If you didn't have those grants,
It wouldn't be, we would have spent whatever the number would have been. What was the number?
and what would you have cut, just hypothetically? What
You
would
mean which specific programs?
Yeah, just out of curiosity.
Well, I've been at the helm of the adult programs for about 5 months, so I think I'd want to give a more informed answer. But anything that had to do with us spending money for expertise, and I think that's the other important piece to realize, is that one of the reasons we're able to match, if not exceed, the sort of number of programs and the attendance that we have at our programs is because so much of what our very talented, very well-educated team does is provide the learning for themselves. So whereas a Darien or a Westport might bring in expertise, let's say to teach an Excel class, we have the staff who are themselves trained, who are themselves teaching in the environment. And that's one of the other ways that we're able to keep pace. And it's a distinguishing factor, I think, for us compared to some of our peers. So we would cut things that, we would cut music programs where maybe we're bringing in people from the outside to do music for children. Or I certainly can tell you now, because we're building our culinary opportunities, we would have to cut some of those classes back as well.
So I just wanted to add, just sort of in the basis of it was just a line a quote that I remember Tom Schulte, who used to be on the Board of Finance, saying last year, and I think you provided this in your presentation, but you can reiterate it now with but in a way people vote with the numbers in terms of attendance. It's that the townspeople seem very much to want this programming because you have wait lists, and so the numbers of the interest in it suggest that it is a service that people very much want.
We could use the example of the investment made to reduce the wait list for the twos. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, although that one's not so much about funding. The funding one is for children's programming. So our children's team, so we have 3 full-time children's librarians who do story times and crafts and after-school programs, right? So that's all so about 10 story times a week, and then every day, 2 or 3 additional after-school programs. Those are done by our team who are on staff with, additional supplies or whatever. So that's factored into their, salaries in terms of that. But in order to really meet kind of critical masses that want to be coming to children's programs, we hire music instructors, right? And then we can get 200 people in a room every Monday after school, which we do. So those children's musicians cost money. They just do. Our team doesn't have guitars.
So that these programs are generally oversubscribed
Oh,
or fully
absolutely.
subscribed?
Absolutely, yes.
We can certainly do less, but I have to say, I don't think we built this building to do less and so we're never going to want to be in a place where we're cutting our programming at this stage for the sake of a $5,000 shift. You know, we'll take that cut elsewhere.
That's not the feedback we're getting, for sure.
I happen to notice, Ellen and others, that the fiscal year 24 audited numbers show 128,000 expenditure on programs, and the proposed fiscal year 26 is in fact $14,000 lower than that. So
Yes.
It looks like a big jump if you compare to the adopted in 25, but that's the adopted in 25 was a result of what was available to you and what you could do with what you had. Whereas with a request of what you're asking this year and what you're projecting in terms of revenue, your proposed programming expenditure is actually down over 2 years.
Yes. We're doing as good a job as we can with the resources available to us. This team knows how to stretch a dollar. I'll just say that.
Well, and I know that the foot traffic and visitorship is, you know, it's off the charts in comparison with a lot of other of our peers.
Yeah, that's the interesting question. A fact, actually, where we've got the highest foot traffic and one of the smallest, if not the smallest, footprint of all of our peer libraries. So clearly people are showing up for our services and our programs.
So where would you see yourselves being at the equilibrium of delivering the kind of programs and services that you want to deliver and where we are now?
I think that's an interesting question. I think we're still in a state of understanding what our community is seeking and hoping for. And I think that we're trying very hard to be prudent and test the market as we go forward to really understand what people want. Thus far, we haven't had any duds. And so, you know, obviously we can't provide everything everyone wants all the time. So we take a fairly disciplined approach to working within sort of, you know, pillars of learning, if you will, and trying to fulfill within, I mean, we've got the whole scope of human knowledge, right? It's a library. So we try to be disciplined in that. If you're asking me what I think the growth rate is in terms of future program expenditures, you know, I think that we would be able to manage ourselves well at levels that look like this plus, you know, 5 or 10% going forward. It's not lost on me that the real answer to this question lies in what are we doing about an endowment? Because all of our growth, really, if we're being prudent here, you know, the growth in the library service is going to come from our ability to really be self-sustaining on an endowment level. And when we get to a number that really makes a contribution, like you see at a Darien or a Westport, then I think we can have a really relaxed, open discussion about what it is that this community would like to see us become, and that becomes aspirational and exciting. What I really would hate to see is that we're in a penny pinching mode where we're talking about cutting children's programs because it looks like a 25% or a 33% increase in a budget line for a $5,000 kind of a number.
So when I was listening to the Board of Finance presentations, one of the things that stood out to me were the facts that you were saying that you have a very high volume of traffic in and out of the building.
Yes.
The usage of the facility is being not exhausted, but overutilized from the point of view of what you had originally projected. And by you, I mean the board. And then that your programs still need to continue to grow and you're expanding them as year to year grows. So my question is, and the feeling that I'm coming from the taxpayer's point of view, is that we can only afford to contribute so much. How much of that growth would become too much for the town to fund?
I guess that's an answer for the taxpayers. And I mean, I think that the answer there is, we're not looking to grow at 25% a year in terms of the program number, if that's the question. I don't think that we're prudent. I don't think we're expecting to do that. It would be a mistake not to be thinking, in strategic, long-term, aspirational terms about what we can provide within reason. And we are really good at working within our budgets. So
Is the idea to grow the endowment to a level where you don't have to rely on the town so much? Or
no, I think,
is it-
I think that you're seeing that the endowment needs to grow so that we can be contributing regularly. And then if it flattens out, if we're so successful that we've got a budget that, like, Darien can contribute $450,000, obviously that's going to have an overall impact. I think that's an interesting discussion, but we have to get there first. And that's possibly a 10-year horizon.
One of my points was that I thought of when you were making the presentation to Board of Finance was that the building sounds like, from the numbers of visitors, that is the maximum capacity.
I don't know what the maximum is. Do we have a maximum capacity?
I mean, we could calculate it, but I mean, everybody's not going to stand, 3 feet
No.
apart.
No, but you mentioned that you have 16 to 1,800 visitors per day.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what is the maximum capacity? It's part of what the occupancy that the fire department allows you to have in the building, but it's also the capacity of comfort within the building of being able to provide the services and having the facilities. So my question is, do you see yourself having to expand because you want to provide more? Or do you see yourself as the library saying, this is our maximum capacity? We're only going to have this number of programs, and we can expect the budget to continue to grow at a rate, compared to inflation and not beyond.
Yeah, I understand. We're delimited by a few things that have nothing to do with what we may want aspirationally. One of those things is parking. One of those things is our facilities management team, right? One of those things is our staff. We're not here talking about increasing our staff by 10 or 15 people. If we had 10 or 15 more people like Darien does, we probably could do more programming, et cetera. But then we'd need to have all that backup support that would help us move the chairs and clean the bathroom and wipe down all the fingerprints on all that beautiful glass. So I think we're, energy costs, all of those things there, it's all incremental. I think we understand what the delimiting factors are. I don't think, we're doing a lot. I mean, how many programs are we doing?
So, I think that's the point I keep coming back to, is the amounts that we're putting in the budget here actually they don't represent an increase in what we're doing. They're reflective of what we're doing already. And what we're trying to do in terms of keeping up with the facility is not overtax our already overtaxed people who just need support in this moment now to do what we're currently doing really successfully. But
So this is the bare minimum to
I think
maintain
this is what we're doing.
you're doing. You're not doing anything more. You're doing a lot right now, but it's not like you're expanding.
We're not increasing our number of programs by, this budget is not based on increasing programs by 50% or 20%. It's based on trying to meet what it is we're currently doing, do it well so that we are not burning out our staff, who are really quite a breaking point, to be frank.
So
But if you look at the audited numbers from 24 and you look at what we're asking for here, they're less than what we spent.
Okay, so following on what you just stated, energy cost. Just looking at a quick graph that you presented at the Board of Finance meeting, it looked like the usage or the cost of usage was scaling down, but because the price in electricity is climbing.
So it's the chart that you're looking at shows that we've reduced our usage. And remember, we're going from a building that was not all electric. In the old building, it had an oil and gas, it had an oil component. right? So the amount of electricity we were using in the old building was a reflection of a partial use in terms of energy provision. And so we've actually reduced our overall energy use in a 100% electric building. We're just dealing with the countervailing force of ever increasing rates from Eversource.
I understand that
Okay.
completely, but I do know that Eversource had to hook up to the electrical grid that you're providing solar panels
Yeah.
wrong, and they had to do it 3 times before they got it straight. Correct?
So it got, so it was correct, everything was corrected in July.
Okay, in July of this past year. And then you received a rebate for the installation of the solar that was presented to the past director for $80,000 rebate. So when you have savings on the electricity because the meters were wrong and you were being overcharged, a credit was given to your account, where is that shown? Because if anything, your electrical usage should be much less, not increasing, because you still have a credit on that account.
Yeah, it shows up in our administrative line where the energy costs are, where we're showing a low.
So we receive quarterly
Rebate.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're two different things. So my understanding, I'm not sure about what happened.
She's talking about the rebate that goes against the budget, which is shown in our.
Right, so this piece, so we get quarterly generation checks for what we sell back to the grid.
Okay,
And those we credit to our energy line, so that is factored into.
so it's in this budget, it's not going to the endowment?
No,
No, no,
no, no, no, no.
Part of the
No, it's-
operation?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's credited to our operation. That's
Yep.
correct.
Okay,
Which is why if you looked at the specifics under admin, right, you'll see a modest increase in our energy costs for next, or to go down, I can't
Yeah,
recall.
it's actually, you can't see it in the actuals on fiscal year 24, our audit, but we actually, our actual bills were like $91,000, but what it shows here is 86 because it's offset
Okay.
by what the checks we received.
okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So my next question is, when you look at the hours of operations of the library, when it's running at full power, full capacity, and I looked at the energy bills and the increase that Eversource is imposing on its clients. The one thing that I've observed is the library lighting on the building is on constant. So if I was to do a quick analysis, I would say that the building is in operation Monday through Thursday, 11 hours. But for an additional 13 hours, the lighting is still running. And if I look at Friday, it's an additional 16 hours that is still running. Saturdays 17, Sundays 19. All that cost is borne by the taxpayer. So I would recommend and request that you consider turning off the lights and perhaps putting landscape lighting that would not be as costly as keeping all the lights.
Do you just mean when the lights are off at night?
I don't know what time you turn them off at night, but I know that I drive by and the lights are on.
So we have them on a schedule, we have them on a timer, they're also on motion sensors. So.
When we have cleaners in the building.
Yeah.
I know, I've seen that.
Right. But then they are set on a schedule to turn off.
Was that part of the commissioning exercise?
Yeah, but it's always been the case. So they, like at 3 in the morning, the library lights are not on.
What time do
Inside.
they shut off?
I think it depends on the day because we have to allow for
Right,
the
the
cleaners and everything. But so we close at 8 o'clock. I think they're off by 10, but I could get the exact time.
Okay, I just want you to look into that and be cognizant.
Yes.
Our
So we-
facilities manager is
On top of it.
extraordinarily
Yeah,
on top of
it.
this. He
follows
does not
the-
want to spend a single dollar
Yeah.
more than
Yeah,
is
and I
necessary
think
on the
to this point, you're raising an important point about the efficiencies and what we've learned about being in a new building where, you know, this is our first full year of operating in the new building that we just finished. We conducted a commissioning exercise with, did Kohler Ronan do that for us, our engineers? Because Cheryl and Victor and the people who are responsible for overseeing the operational side felt that we weren't getting as much as we could in terms of savings from a building that everyone had spent so much time committed to making sure was an efficient operation. And so after that commissioning exercise was done, we started to see, okay, this fan doesn't need to be on for 24 hours. It can be on for a timed period of time, or this timer can be adjusted. Like that is typically what is done in a new building.
Efficiency.
You do this commissioning, I'm sure you know that. So we had some really strong results from having done that, because everyone was very committed to making sure that we were achieving the results that we had promised
When was that done?
last year.
Yeah, there was a spring and a fall.
Okay. Okay.
Getting back to the program, that's a question. Is Zoom available or is a recording available for people to see?
We
afterwards,
record a
or-
lot of our programs and do put it up on a YouTube channel. Very often
Oh, okay.
allow you to do that for whatever, they don't allow that
So many people have asked.
copyright yet.
Who's
We have a YouTube channel. We
acceptability?
could do a better job of marketing it. Thank you, Janet, for mentioning that.
What is the
Okay.
YouTube channel?
It's, you mean, what's the link?
Yeah,
I'll send it to you.
okay.
It's on the homepage.
Yeah, it's on the homepage of the library.
Could
Yeah,
I ask a couple questions quickly?
Yes.
If the person who's at 203-434-5691 could identify themselves, that would be super helpful. For minutes, so we know who's attending. And even if you want to do it in the chat to me, that's fine. And secondly, second question is, can you just be clear about where the increase in your request is coming from, the bulk of which it's coming from? Because what I'm hearing is if we want to pick on, not yet. No, hold on. Sorry. What I'm hearing is if we were to take any reduction against your requested ask, it's not going to come out of a fundraising number, because you'll have to raise more, in fact, to make up for that shortfall. So that's not where a reduction would come from. But most importantly, what you really need an increase over the requested ask from last year is to pay for a custodian, for an AV person, because your AV person is currently working 3 jobs, and for a digital collection. I want us to be, I know it's already 3:50, but I want us to be focused on what is really the drivers of any perceived ask from last year. And also, that's my understanding from watching the Board of Finance presentation.
That's correct, Hillary.
And my next question is, are you, this is going to sound a little wonky, but it's not a town council question, because we can't increase your budget. My concern is, but we do have people from Board of Finance here. Hi, James. Are you getting enough support from the town? Are we concerned about the economy and how it might impact giving this year? I think we get quite a deal and quite a return on our investment for what the town gives in a grant. And to the extent that some of our questions about it come from the way things are accounted for by line item instead of a bigger picture, it begs the question a little bit of has there been thought to having the town provide all of your operating expenses? We're different from other towns in that we don't fund any capital expenses by the library, thank you, except for that $10 million grant to build the new building. But, is there a thought to having programming and fundraising strictly be a matter of fundraising dollars? But really, do you feel supported enough? Is there?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to think about that. I promise I will go away and think about that now that you've opened that door
I
for
can't
me.
impact that. Unfortunately, I can only, the town council can't add, unfortunately. And I don't know that there's.
I know, but I'll just point out, Cheryl and I have been in these roles since September, and we've got our arms around, I think, a not lacking in complexity type of a budget. This is a complex organization with, 24 full-time and 40 altogether employees with with a lot of different moving parts. And I think we've done as best we can to really understand what all of the pressure points are. And I'll say to you that the number one thing that would impact us in terms of growth going forward is our ability to add staff. And then that's 70% of our budget, salaries and compensation. And so, you know we're operating within a limited band of what it is that we can influence. And we're working very hard to maximize, rationalize, and be frugal where we can. But I am also ambitious, as is Cheryl. And we don't want to have built a magnificent building and fill it with a lot of mediocrity. And so I would really like to see us be focused on the what's possible and have there be the trust that we're working very hard to keep our pencils sharp. And you're right, we will be continuing to go forward on cutting things that people don't want cut. If we find ourselves in a position of a declining amount of support from the town. It is impossible to plan on fundraising as a budget item. And so there's always an element of, keeps things interesting when you have to raise $1 million a year. I don't think there's a lot of other organizations in the town that are doing that. I'll be also honest in saying that as a taxpayer and 23-year resident in town, it's really important to me that we not become the giant fundraising machine that sucks the air out of everybody else's campaigns. And I'm very sensitive. These are my friends and colleagues, and I want everyone to be able to succeed. Part of what the library's mission is to be that lever of support for nonprofits in the community. So whether it's being the place where we can co-sponsor programming for the Glass House or the Nature Center or Planet New Canaan or Staying Put, or bringing our librarians to Lapham to teach technology or to teach or to run programming book groups at Waveney Inn and other places, we're sort of very much that kind of nexus of being able to provide support. We had a meeting this morning where a very fruitful conversation with the folks at the UN committee, which you may know has been in existence in New Canaan for over 50 years. It's the oldest independent UN committee in the nation. And I think that we're going to be taking the lead on being a partner with them going forward to continue the lecture that we've had for all these years. So I don't know, I think we do our jobs well. We've been doing it well with a really prudent budget. And if you ask me to dream, I'm gonna take you up on it, Hillary, but
Well, I don't know, like I said, I don't know that there's an appetite for that, but I just think, thinking perspective wise at what the library has become, quite the community center. I was there today for lunch. It's hard because we're not supposed to like pick and choose. You guys have to decide how you spend what grant we give you, but I think we need to be thoughtful about it, really thoughtful about it.
I mean, if I can speak on behalf of certainly myself and perhaps the board, I think everybody's very focused on what long-term financial sustainability looks like. I always said that when I took on this role 10 years ago, that half the job was going to be getting the building done and the other half was going to be ensuring its financial future. So I'm in that other 50% role at the moment, and I take it very seriously, and I know our board does as well. So again, growth for us is not something we're going to be necessarily relying on the town for. We think we've had a healthy and strong partnership that's comparable with our peers. Happy to answer more about this, but
Well, I would just say, Ellen, I think your long-term goal of establishing and maintaining a reasonable endowment is critical to providing the opportunity to dream. I mean, if we had a $20 million endowment, you'd be getting $1 million a year. That's dreaming money.
that's when
right?
I'll be that's when I'll be retired and sailing off into that sunset.
But it takes a long time to build that endowment. So I commend your team for focusing on that long-term goal.
Can we focus for a second on the increase in staff? You said you wanted to add a new AV person
Yes.
and 2
half-time, he's part-time.
Oh,
He or she would be part-time.
okay. And then 2 janitors or?
One
facilities?
janitor, single janitor, and, yeah, a custodial person. So the custodian, we're assuming is about a 50 to 55 kind of a salary. And the part-time AV is probably 25. And those people are really important because at the moment we have one facilities manager over the course of the 64-hour week that you were alluding to earlier. And he's doing everything from managing our complicated HVAC systems to setting up chairs. So that's not really a sustainable position.
On your list of staff at the library, you show 2. You show Victor and Kevin.
Calvin is a
He's part-time.
part-time
Okay.
custodial assistant. yeah.
So would he make up the other?
No,
part? No, different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We
he-
are open, 64 hours and sometimes later for programs on a weekend or something like that. So we do need to cover.
Sometimes
7
we-
days.
yeah,
7
sometimes we have
days.
extended hours too, because we're now in the rental business, as you know, Christina. So if I want to have an event during a time when we might otherwise be closed in order to generate income, we have to staff that. And it's just really, we've learned a lot since we've opened the building. We've doubled the expectation of what we're going to do in terms of rental income. That's ambitious, we're not going to be doubling again, I can tell you that. But if I'm going to earn that income, I've got to be able to support it with facility staff, pick up, clean up. You don't want to turn up in an unclean room when you've got a garden club meeting. When after the tax people show up, it's really, it's like running a hotel.
Okay, so are you replacing any existing staff or increasing the staff?
We're increasing the staff. The request is that what we're going to add a custodian and we're going to add a part-time AV person.
Okay.
We achieved some rationalization this year. We had a retirement. You want to talk about that?
So one of our contract cleaners retired, who, Willie Blue, if any of you know Willie, he's
Okay.
been there for 45 years. So with his retirement, we do also have a contract, an additional contract cleaning service. They come in after hours and do a deep clean every night. So we were able to have.
So if somebody's retiring, aren't you filling that position over? Or are you thinking of replacing that position?
With the custodian, with the full-time custodian.
They were a contract cleaner.
Oh, okay.
Willie was a contract cleaner.
Okay. Okay.
The flood last year, that was completely covered by insurance?
It was covered by the insurance of
Our
our,
construction company.
construction company,
So
so
it did
we-
not hit our.
it didn't hit our insurance, which was wonderful. We just certified the rates for the new year. We're great.
Did I read this correctly that okay, the old building was covered for 4 million, now you have 40 million, but it's only a 7% increase? Really? Oh, okay. All right. Good coverage there.
We also have additional D&O and other insurances that were added to that.
One last question. The health insurance coverage doesn't appear as a line item on the budget.
Right.
So we're actually contributing an additional 500,000
Yeah.
in benefits.
I actually, we did a little work to understand what you've been contributing over time. If I have that here. And I have a 10-year schedule of what it is that you guys have paid. The average over the past 10 years has been about 375,000 a year. And then you can just see how it's sort of gone up and down. It's been pretty flat, pretty even. We've gone, as low as 314.
350 last year, 340.
Yeah, I think you paid 346. You may budget for a different number because of our number of full-time employees, but that's your actual.
We currently have 23 full-time staff, but only 17 are on the insurance right now.
Only 17 people take it up.
Okay, right now our expenses that show up in a different location is 496,120.
That's what you budget.
Yes.
Yeah, so but the actual that you're spending are those numbers I just showed you.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you compare our budgets, when we were looking at the town contributions for all of our peer libraries, it's apples to apples, and that number is incorporated in all of the municipal appropriations.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, actually shows a decline of close to 10% last year. I'm happy to share that information with anybody that wants it.
Are there any further questions from town council members?
I have one other question. So there's no operating expenses related to the legacy building yet.
That's correct.
That will change once you have a plan, correct?
Wow.
Okay,
Yes,
we don't know where that's coming from. I mean, is there any?
we don't. It'll be part of the conversation a priori before anything is undertaken on our side. I think it's prudent for us to understand if we are going to be incurring additional expenses, where that revenue is going to be coming from. We wouldn't undertake.
Is there a donor or any? I thought
We
there's-
had one donor self-identify with a gift that isn't going to be substantial in terms of meeting a renovation plan, but that's not to say that others won't be able to identify themselves. I think we have to go through I guess you'd say like a charrette exercise, if you were thinking about this in terms of bringing together a large community of people and ideas. That's our ambition, to do that. Clearly, we've been focused on trying to get our budget, operating budget solidified, but we have been taking some steps to make sure we're at least moving that process along. As you can see, we have a lot of demands on our finances, and we want to put them all in the correct order. So operating, there's also legacy, there's also endowment. These are tall orders. These are big numbers. It will not be inexpensive. It's already cost us $2.4 million to pick up and move a building that we didn't feel that we needed for operations. And so backing into a use and a budget is now the next step. We want to make sure that it's relevant, purposeful, serves a community need, makes sense for the library's future, and doesn't overburden us in any way in terms of staffing or operational expense.
Could we schedule a tour of the library facility?
Do you mean the 1913 building, or do you mean?
No. the actual library.
Anytime, of course.
If we could schedule it to have Old Town Council come in at once. so
Yes, in
it's not-
fact, I think I proposed that and was told everybody had seen it, but I'd love to have you come through, sure.
What, Penny?
I said, I've seen it, been in and out for many meetings and so forth, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
And what's great is when you get to see it with some of our incredible librarian staff. We're actually doing we're taking some of our board members on a very deep dive into the children's room before the next board meeting, because it's a fascinating operation. So we'd be happy to arrange that.
That's actually the one, I mean, I feel like I've toured and seen so much of it, but not being in that demographic, the
You're missing
children's
the
space
children.
might be an interesting, see some of those
too.
programs in process. I
That's
want to see
where-
the robot.
Yeah, you want to see that's where we hide the very fun machine, the materials handling machine that I love so much.
Penny has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a closing comment. First off, I appreciate your presentation and taking the time to be a thorough explanation and all of the questions that the town council posed to you. I know it's appreciated by all of us to have such detailed information, and we have a better understanding of where you're coming from, where you've been, where you want to go, so forth. I just hope at the same time you all understand that we have to ask these probing questions, because we have a responsibility to prepare a budget for the taxpayers that is, reflective of what's balanced addressing of needs in the community. And so when we look at the town side of the budget, that's just a little over 3%, and the Board of Education side, that's a little over 4%. And then we look at your budget that is just shy of 8%. It kind of, sends up a little red flag to, really be a bit more probing in our questioning. So that's the responsibilities that we have.
I think we understand that, Penny. I think had we not had the cut last year in the increase, I should say, really the reduction in the increase, we would be at a 4% budget this year. That's what this number represents. And I think I do like to look at this as an aggregate number, which is we're asking the town to contribute $222,000 more to their grant this year, which I think in the sort of scope of things and scheme of things is just, it seems like a better number to digest, if you will. And I fully understand your concerns and your right to ask those questions, and we are more than happy to provide as much minutia and detail as you like, because I have to say, Cheryl and I have had nothing but fun looking at spreadsheets for 5 months, and we are ready to go. But thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Ellen and Cheryl. Are there any further questions from town council members? Not seeing any, I will wrap things up and say thank you all very much for joining us here today. And Ellen and Cheryl, Rob, Doug, and I couldn't see everybody else who was on the screen. So I'll just say thank you to everybody for spending the time with us today, and appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you.
I'd also like to say thank you to you, Eric and Hillary, for making this such a seamless process. Really, it's been extremely helpful. And I've really enjoyed that opportunity to work collectively with you and the Board of Finance. I think that's a great efficiency. I love that we've had that opportunity to create that dynamic. And I hope going forward, we can continue to do that. It's very efficient and very helpful for all of us.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody. And Hillary, if you don't have any objections, I'll call the meeting finished.